Welcome back. This is Mickey Burdick, and welcome to Vectorworks Tutorial 7. We're starting to play with 3D tools today. Now, let's jump right in with one of the most basic operations that you're going to be using is called Extrude. So if we just draw a rectangle here, we're in top plan view. But we can jump in to a 3D view. And now what we want to do is bring this up and into space. The quickest way to do that is to select it and then come up to Model. Remember, Model is where you'll find all of your 3D tools. Modify, just to the left, is all of your 2D tools. Model is all the 3D counterparts. So with your object selected, just go up to Extrude and you can select how tall you want it to be. 4 foot sounds good to me. So I'll click OK. And there's our object. I'll put that into OpenGL so you can see it a little bit better. Or shaded is what they're calling it. I'll actually change my default so that everything comes into shaded right now, just so it's a little bit easier for you to see. So that is an extrusion. We have just a shape, and we extrude it up. The hotkey for extruding is Control E. I use extrude very frequently. So that's definitely one of the hotkeys you want to learn. Control E. 4 foot was the last one I did, so that's going to be auto-filled for me. But let's say I want that one to be 10 foot tall. Enter, and there we go. That is extrude. Now you'll notice, if we go over to our object info, we now have a couple different things in here. So we know that looking at it from top plan, this object is 9 foot by 9 foot. The extrusion, this distance is 4 foot. We also have bottom Z here, which tells you where it is in relation to the layer plane. So if we, or your Z axis. So if we look at this from just the front, you'll see it is sitting right here on that line. Tilt it just a little bit so you can see that again. Now what you can do is you can grab this and you can drag it up, and that'll change our bottom Z is now 3 foot 11. So now we're hovering 3 foot 11 over the layer plane. You can also manually set that. Say I want it to be sunk into the ground by 1 foot. I do -1 foot. And now it's sitting below. But I'll reset that to 0. You'll notice also when we're working with extrusions, a positive number is going to bring it up, and a negative number is going to push it down. So if we have similar shape right there, and I extrude that, Control E. If I extrude that -4 foot, it is now below the surface. Just like that. Something else to note, when you get into modeling, let's say we want a whole series of little squares, and I want several of them. Let's say 6 of them. So I've got all my little squares here, and I want them all extruded to 4 foot. I can do that if I select all of these. Control E, extrude. Let's extrude them 10 foot each. So you can extrude multiple objects at the same time. The only problem with that is once you perform that operation of extruding, these are tied together. So now the operation itself becomes a unit, which means I can no longer grab just one of these and move it. If I wanted to move this one column, I would not be able to do that. They're tied together. There are times where that's handy, and there are times where that is really annoying. So just be cognizant of that and understand that when you extrude multiple objects, they're going to be linked together and harder to modify. That's not to say you can't modify this. You can modify it by simply right-clicking on that unit and say Edit. But you don't edit the 3D component. You edit the 2D geometry that it's based on. Say I wanted to edit just this one. You can do whatever you want to the 2D, and then exit, and now it's up there. But still, if I tried to move all this, they would move together as one. So understand that's a limitation. And a lot of times it may mean you have to extrude countless things at the same time at different times, and that can be a bit of a time suck, but that's just one of the trade-offs. A lot of times having them linked together is very handy though. Another operation that you're going to be using over and over and over again is going to be add solids and subtract solids. What those allow you to do, let's say we have this circle. It's going to be a big old column. Oh, and that is below. So let me actually bring that up. So now they are intersecting right here. What you can do, you can add these both together. If you select them both, go up to Model, Add Solids, and that's now one unit. The other thing you can do is subtract solids. So select both of these. And the counterpart to add solids and subtract solids, it's very similar to add surface and clip surface. So if you have both these objects selected, go up to Model, and let's subtract solids this time. Now it'll ask you which object you want to keep. And we want to keep, let's say we'll keep that one in the red. As soon as we run that operation, basically the column just takes a bite out of this, and we're left with that. There are different ways you can run this as well. So subtract solids. Let's switch it, and let's keep this part of the cylinder. So now it takes that chunk out of there. Another option is to retain the subtracting object. So let's subtract solids. And you can click this box, Retain Subtracting Object. And now we can pull that out, and we still have both parts. So that is subtract solids. One of the places where you'll find yourself using that a lot, let's say we have a 6-inch wide wall. Extrude that up 10 foot. So we have a little wall here, and we want to just go ahead and punch a hole in it. So, oops, I want to make sure you're on automatic. Once it turns blue, I can draw on it, and there's my, let's say that's my window. So, what I want to do now, this is still just a 2D object on the face of that. I can extrude it -6 inches. And so now it is going through the wall. So now we have that as a solid within a solid. If I select that and the wall and run subtract solids, there's our little window. There are a lot of different ways to do that though. Let's take a look really quick at our push-pull tool now, because that ties in a lot to extrudes. A push-pull tool, or push-pull tool, allows us to grab any face, you'll see it'll turn red, and push it or pull it. So I can shrink that down, shrink that down. So that's handy. If I didn't know exactly that this was 6 inches and I wanted to create this going into the wall, I would just select it. And then I can, you'll see it'll lock in to certain points. So I'm pushing it to right there. And you'll see the little distance box underneath. My cursor says -6 inches. Click there. And so now we know that that is in the wall 6 inches. And then again, you could select both, Model, subtract solids, and I don't want to retain. And that's gone. So that's another way to do it. Yet a third way to do that, with a lot of these tools, you have the option in your modes for push-pull mode once you get into the 3D space. Let's enable that. And we'll enable combine mode. So now, with my rectangle, you'll see it turns blue. That means, okay, I can make that my working plane. I will draw my square, my little window, and it will automatically jump to my push-pull tool. So then I just click it, pull it to the back of the wall, and it pulls it out already. Same thing, it works with your circle tool, or I can pull it towards me. You can also tab in to say how far you want it to move. So select it, tab, I want it to stick out 1 foot. So that's super handy. Then say you want those all to go away, just grab your push-pull tool, select that surface, and you can click it to right there. That goes away. If I wanted to seal up this window, I could just grab this surface, pull it up to there, and that's gone as well. The other thing to know when you're working with push-pull is that you can use other objects to snap to. So say I want to have a little square nubbin coming out of here, turns blue. I can snap it to here. I can use that to register how far I want it to come. Then you'll see if we look at that from directly overhead, you'll see that that is in fact in line with that. If I wanted to, I could grab my push-pull and bring it all the way over to there. So super handy to be able to snap to other objects. So just to review, subtract solids, very useful for punching holes in things or making odd shapes. Several different ways to do it. Probably the easiest one is to grab one of these tools. Make sure that this push-pull mode is enabled. Certain tools don't have that option. Double line doesn't have that option. Line, circle does, oval does. But you just go ahead and draw whatever that is, and it'll turn red. Click on that, and then just push it to the back of your wall, and there's your window. So that's probably the easiest way to get that done. That is push-pull, and that is subtract solids. A similar tool to subtract solids is going to be intersect solids. It's different in that what you are retaining is essentially the area. So say it's like a Venn diagram kind of. What it will retain is the area where they overlap. So say I grab these two objects. If I run intersect solids, it will keep just the little wedge where the two intersect. That gives you that little pie. Control Z to undo. So that's intersect solids. I don't use it a lot, but when you do need to use it, it will be a huge time saver. For example, let's go ahead and say we want to make a little slatted moon piece. So we want a moon to rise upstage of something, and we want it to be made out of like an old slatted barnwood. But we don't want to draw all of these slats and things individually. So I'll draw one slat. I will extrude it. Let's extrude it 3/4 of an inch. We're going to make that out of a 1x stock. So there's our one slat. You'll see. Now, a lot of these same tools that we have up here will work in the 3D space. For example, move by points. So I have one slat drawn. I actually am going to need 45 slats. So I'll change that. I'll just click there and I'll drag down all my slats. There we go. I've got a huge number of slats now. I'll select all of these, and even though they're not touching, I can turn these essentially into the same object. So it's similar to how when we extruded things at the same time, they became tied together through that operation. If I select all of these, and I go up to Model, Add Solids, it's now treated as one object. So all I have to do now is draw the shape of my moon. Let's go here. There's my moon. I will extrude that out. Let's say a foot. Then I just make sure that my moon and my slats are overlapping. I'll move my moon down just a touch. Here's the thing, if you want to make just small movements, have it selected, hold down Shift, and then just use your arrow keys. And that'll put it. So now I know that my slats and my moon shape are intersecting. So if I select both of these, and I run the operation intersect solids, that gives me just a moon-shaped chunk of slats that would have been nigh impossible to simply draft by hand. But using that operation, it becomes very easy. So you're not going to use that one a lot, but it's cool to know that it exists. and when you do need it, it's pretty indispensable. Let's move now down into our 3D palette and start taking a look at some of these. Let's start with just a rectangle here. Extrude 10 feet, just to give us something to work with. So over here in our tool set, we've already looked at flyover tool, we've looked at our set working plane, and we've looked at push pull. A couple other that are going to be familiar to you would be the fillet and the chamfer. Those are very similar to the 2Ds up here, fillet and chamfer. Chamfer will put an angled edge on something, and fillet will put a rounded edge on something. So let's try fillet. What you do up here is you select how big you want that radius to be. Let's say 1 foot, since that's what's there. You select the edge you want it to be run on, and then click the checkbox, and that's our filleted edge. Chamfer is very similar, except it will put an angle on the edge. Again, you can select how big you want that to be. Let's do a 2-foot chamfer. That's more than a chamfer, but select. There we go. So that's chamfer and fillet. I will undo that. A similar tool is going to be taper face. That will allow you to basically change the angle of the entire face of this. So what you do with this is you select the first face and you select the second face, and you're able to move one. The first click is the face that you want unchanged. The second face you'll be able to adjust. So I click my second time, and you'll see it kind of shadows what it's going to look like. Again, the first click is the face you want unchanged. The second click will be the one that moves. Can bring it out to there. We're going to want to change this angle. So it's a cool way to create ramps, tapers, etc. That is your taper face tool. Another fun tool is our shell tool. What this allows us to do is kind of hollow out a solid. So say I want a bathtub that is this shape. You can set the thickness of the wall, and it will hollow out the entire thing from one face. So let's say we want a 6-inch wall on our bathtub, and I just select the face, click check, And there we go. That puts a little 6-inch wall all the way around it. Now if you selected a different face, it would hollow it out that way. So again, not one you're going to use a ton, but when you need it, it is super handy. Another tool that I don't use a whole ton is this 3D polygon tool. What this allows you to do is to make polygons in space. So you can just click certain things regardless of what plane you're on. And it creates that shape. We'll get into some of that a little bit more if we start talking about NURBS curves and 3D loci and things like that. Again, it's not one I use a huge amount, but it's good to know that it exists. Lastly, let's take a look at our Deform tool. This tool is it's like 9 tools in one. You can do a whole slew of things. Let's have a little column. We'll extrude that up 20 foot. We got a big old column here. The Deform tool allows us to twist this thing up. It allows us to bend it. It allows us to taper it. It allows us to make it bulge. So you'll see up here, we have a whole set of modes. Let's start first with twist. And this is one where the more you play with it, the more it will make sense. I'll show you some of the operations you can do with it, but this is by no means comprehensive. The best thing to do is just to make some objects and start trying to twist them. So we'll go to twist solid mode. The object I want to twist is selected. And then I can set here where I want my twist to be centered around. I'll say for ease right now the center. And then what you do is you draw out this way and you add a little handle to it. Second click will add the handle. And then you basically twist that handle around. And you can read off to the right there, it says twist angle 360 degrees. I could come around again, 720. Let's keep it at, let's say we're just doing 180. There we go. And so that whole thing is twisted 180. Other options, you don't have to necessarily twist out of the center. So we could twist out to the side. And it kind of gives it a little skew. So that is twist, and you could also twist a different face. Like that. The other one you might want to use is taper. Similarly, you click in the center, and then you're setting a handle, and this is going to be kind of like a little slider. So the closer you set it, the more dramatic your taper will be. The further out you set it, the more you'll have a little more precision in setting that. I'll kind of set it right here. And then wherever I slide from there, if I slide in, it'll taper narrower. If I slide out, it will taper bigger. That was actually in symmetric mode, taper symmetric mode. If I unclick symmetric mode and I run it, it will only taper in the one direction. Like that. Very, very similar is bulge. Keep it on symmetrical. And that just allows you to bulge things out from the center. And lastly, you can bend things. So say we have our object here, you grab the bend tool, click the face you want to bend along. Let's see here. And you can bend the piece up and around and do all sorts of things. It's fun for making organic shapes, things like that. You're not going to probably early on be needing a lot of those functions, but again, they're there and there's some really powerful things you can do with it. So have fun with it. That's one you might just want to get in and play with sometime. I should also point out we also have a couple quick shape tools down here, cone, hemisphere. sphere. So for those, you just click, pull out, click your radius. Let's say we want a 8-foot sphere, so a 4-foot radius. And there we go. Similarly, the cone. Kind of come over here, you figure out your radius. We'll do 4 foot again, so an 8-foot cone. Height, 20 foot. Oops, tab in, 20 foot. There we go. And that's most of what we got for 3D tools over here. There are some more advanced things such as NURBS curves, loft surfaces, things like that. We'll get into some of that eventually, but for now, this should be a good jumping off point for at least being able to manipulate stuff in a 3D space. Thanks for watching. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.